What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be doing another updated hero guide, this time focusing on one of my favourite characters from all of Star Wars, which is Princess Leia. Now, Leia has seen some pretty big changes since launch, mainly around her damage output and the alternate fire mode for her blaster, which I'll touch on in just a minute, but she definitely seems a lot more balanced now since they gave her a slight nerf, and she's actually probably one of the more balanced heroes in the game at this point. If any of you guys tend to struggle with blaster heroes, as I know I did when I first started playing, then Leia is definitely one character that I'd have to recommend starting out with. The devs themselves even said they designed her to be a bit of an intro character to newer or inexperienced players, so if you're after a character who's a little easier to use, then Leia is definitely the character that I'd have to recommend. So in these guides, I do cover both Galactic Assault and the Heroes vs Villain game modes as well, so I'll separate both game modes and touch on both the best star cards to use and the best tactics to use in each game mode as well. Before I get stuck into that though, I'll just quickly touch on Leia's HP and abilities just so that any newer players out there can get a good idea of how she plays. So she starts off with a base HP of 650, which is the same as most of the other blaster heroes in the game. However, she actually has two star cards that both directly relate to her health. So in terms of the blaster heroes, she's by far the best when it comes to her HP, other than Boss, because obviously he can fully regen his health. As for her speed, again, she's pretty much the exact same as most of the other blaster heroes in the game. There may be a slight difference in their speeds, but for the most part you really can't notice any difference when running side by side with another blaster hero. Her weapon of choice is her Defender pistol, which a lot of people don't actually realise is a 2-round burst weapon, since it fires off the second shot almost instantaneously after the first one, and I actually didn't even know this either when I first started playing, so it's definitely not uncommon for this to go unnoticed by most people. Her blaster does also have an alternate fire mode, as I mentioned earlier, and this is just done by holding down the L2 or left trigger button, or if you're on PC then it'd be the right mouse button. And this actually locks onto enemies, so you barely even need to aim it to be able to hit enemies at a longer distance. The alternate fire mode did used to be a lot more powerful, as I mentioned, but it was far too overpowered, so they decided to tone it down just a bit, and I think they've finally found a really good balance for it. Now, moving on to her abilities, and she does have a pretty decent set of abilities. None of them are anything crazy, but none of them are bad either. They all just serve their own purpose, and they're all good for both offensive and defensive purposes as well. Her L1 ability is her Flash Grenade, and even though this is probably her worst ability, it's not bad by any means, and it does come in handy more often than not. The grenade explodes on impact, blinding anyone within the blast radius and turning their screen completely white for a short period of time. This ability can be really handy to cause a bit of panic for your enemies. Once they've been blinded, most of them will start to freak out and not really know what to do, which leaves them open for an easy attack by you or your teammates. Her L1R1 ability is called Rapid Fire, and this causes Leia to whip out an enhanced E11 rifle which has a crazy high rate of fire, which she can then use while the ability remains active. Depending on how many rounds you fire off, the ability will stay active for anywhere from 7 to 10 seconds, which is more than enough to fully take down an enemy villain or a large group of infantry. So again, this is another ability that is really useful in a lot of situations. Her R1 ability, and probably her most useful ability, is her Squad Shield. This is really similar to the regular Squad Shield ability that the Officer class has, although it can take almost twice the amount of damage, and she can also start cooling down the ability as soon as she places it down. This means that as soon as it gets destroyed, you should almost be able to place another one down straight away, which is really handy for playing the objective, and effectively you can just pretty much have a constant shield around you and your teammates as well, so she's definitely one of the best characters in the game when it comes to playing the objective. So that's pretty much all of the base tips covered. Now we're going to move on to some of the best tips to use when it comes to Galactic Assault. So to start off, I'm just going to go through some of her best star cards to use in Galactic Assault. And although the majority of them are all pretty decent, there's only really 4 that stand out to me, so I'm just going to cover those 4 in this video. The first card I'm going to recommend is her For the Rebellion card, which is one of the 2 cards that I'd recommend using at all times when you're playing Galactic Assault. This card makes it so that each kill you get with Leia, she actually is able to regenerate an extra 20 HP, which is super handy to make sure you stay alive and keep those kill streaks going a lot longer. 20 HP doesn't really sound like all that much, but 5 kills means an extra 100 HP, so it definitely all adds up, and this is definitely a card that I'd recommend you use at all times. The second card I'm going to recommend is her High Spirit card, and this is another card that I mentioned at the start of the video that affects her base HP. Without this card, Leia can regenerate 200 HP, which is still fairly decent, but with this card equipped and fully upgraded, she can regenerate 300 HP, which is nearly half of her total health pool, which is absolutely crazy. This combined with the last card that I mentioned allows her to pretty much fully regen her health, which effectively means that your enemies are going to have to take you out in one go rather than slowly eating away at your health, which again just means your kill streaks are generally going to be a lot longer. The third card I'm going to recommend is her Laser Brain card, and this gives a slight damage bonus to her alternate fire mode, which, as I said earlier, is currently pretty well balanced, and with the addition of this card, it just puts it a bit over the top and allows it to be just that tiny bit better. Fully upgraded, this actually turns it from a 2-shot kill to a 1-shot kill on all classes other than a heavy, depending on the range at which you fire it. If the target is a long way away, then it can still be a 2-shot kill, but for the most part it is going to be a 1-shot kill, which just makes the alternate fire mode an absolute beast again, and it can really help with the longer kill streaks, especially for any newer players as well. The last card I'm going to recommend is her Shield Durability card, which, exactly as it sounds, is just going to increase the maximum health for her squad shield. If you're a big objective player like myself, then this is definitely another go-to card. This is going to come in handy so often when you're trying to play the objective, and it can even just help defend choke points and stuff like that as well. So this is a dream card to use for any of you objective players out there. So now moving on to some tips for Galactic Assault, and to be honest, Leia really is a bit of a jack of all trades when it comes to this game mode. You can get away with playing fairly aggressive due to her strong HP. You can play a bit more passively and use the alternate fire mode to take out enemies from a bit further away, and then, as I've mentioned, she is also really good for playing the objective as well, so really you can just about get away with anything. My main rule of thumb when playing as Leia, and really just any hero for that matter, is just to make sure I stay on the move as much as possible, bouncing from objective to objective and choke point to choke point, because once a few enemies catch onto where you are, they can start to target you, and even though I said her HP is really strong, she does only have 650 HP, so she definitely isn't invincible either. Make sure to keep on the move, use your flash grenade and rapid fire abilities if you ever find yourself under the pump a little bit, and try your best to make proper use of her squad shield to help you and your team take or defend any objectives. She's definitely one of the funner characters to play as in Galactic Assault, so my main tip really is just to stick to a playstyle that you feel comfortable with. As I said, you can just about get away with most different playstyles, but as I say with every hero in the game, just make sure to play it smart and don't play too aggressively, otherwise you'll end up dead sooner rather than later. So that's pretty much all of the tips for Galactic Assault. Now we're going to move on to some of the best star cards to use in the Heroes vs Villain game modes. So the first card I'm going to mention is the High Spirit card that I mentioned for Galactic Assault, which is the one that allows an extra 100 HP regeneration. The extra health is always a big help in these game modes, so this is probably the card that I'd recommend using at all times. As for the other health regen card for the Rebellion, this is another viable option, as fully upgraded it will regen 100 HP per villain you kill, but it's definitely not as useful in these game modes as it is in Galactic Assault, so it's up to you whether you want to use this card again, or pick from another one of the cards that I mentioned next. The next card I'm going to recommend is the Rebel Heart card, and this one makes it so that you'll receive less damage when using the rapid fire ability, which is seriously a lifesaver when you're coming up against a villain in a close quarters situation. If someone like Maul comes to try and take you out, this ability can absolutely melt him, and the damage reduction means you're also going to be more likely to stay alive in that situation as well. The fourth and final card I'm going to recommend is her Relentless Firing card, which makes the rapid fire ability last longer, and fully upgraded it's going to give you an extra 55%, which equates to roughly 4 or 5 seconds extra use, which is awesome for obvious reasons. This helps massively in the kind of situation that I just mentioned where someone is attacking you in close quarters. That extra 4 or 5 seconds can be the difference between living and dying, so this card combined with the last card will make you a lot more of a tank in a close quarters battle. Now moving on to the tips for these game modes, and the main tip I want to address is about her squad shield ability. Now I hear a lot of different opinions about this ability in the HVV modes. Some people say to never ever use it, and some say that it is really handy, but to be honest it really just comes down to the situation you're in. For example, if you're playing HVV and there are 3 saber users on the other team, then it's probably in your best interest to steer clear of using the shield, since that's going to give them a massive advantage and a place to hide from your blaster fire. So in that situation I agree when people say just to never place down a shield at all. On the other hand, if there is only 1 saber user and 3 blaster users on the other team, then by all means use the shield to your advantage. Just make sure to keep an eye on the saber user, as they can still make you pay if they get close enough to the shield. You never really want to place it in an important area, so I usually always place it off to the side just a little bit so that it's still there if I need it, but it also won't get in my way if there is an enemy on the other side of it. So that's going to be it for our updated Leia guide, guys. Hopefully some of these tips helped you out, and if they did, then make sure to leave a like down below to help support the channel. Like I mentioned before, if you do have any tips of your own, then definitely don't hesitate to leave a comment and let everyone know. The more tips the better, so definitely feel free to leave your own tips as well. If you are new to the channel, then feel free to subscribe and make sure to turn on your notifications so you don't miss out on any Battlefront 2 guides or live streams. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.